All right, we're ready. Good evening. It's 7 p.m. and I'd like to open the March 25th, 2021 school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by Town Council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it's not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this Zoom meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask the people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hands, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address. After speaking, we request that the participant return the microphone back to mute. All right, like that said. Start the agenda with the consent agenda, the minutes from March 18th, 2021, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to approve the the minutes from March 18th, 2021 and the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the minutes of the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll call for all our votes or roll call votes online. I'll start with Timmerland.
Timmerland Rossius, yes.
Matt.
Matt Hunt, yes.
Justin.
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Brad.
Brad Austin, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, we have at least two segments in the meeting for input from interested citizens, one now and one closer to the end of the meeting. If there's anybody that would like to speak before the school committee, please use the raise your hand function, and Dorothy Malone, our meeting moderator, will get you in front of us.
We do not have any raised hands, Chairman Fontanella.
Okay. And next we have recognition. Dr. Clenchey, what do we have tonight for recognition?
Thank you, Chairman Fontanella. I know we're talking about this later on tonight in terms of our full in-person return, K-8, Monday, March 29th. But I want to take this opportunity to thank our administrators and staff for working super hard to make sure that we're ready to welcome our students back on Monday. A lot of work needed to be done. We needed to reschedule, make sure that our rooms were ready. We had to organize bus routes, etc. Everything is done and we're ready to go, and we're super excited to greet our students on Monday. And I believe Steve Mark has a recognition he would like to give tonight as well.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'd like to announce, or I regret to announce, that Mike Denau has announced his retirement for the Littleton Public Schools. Mike, wave hi, by the way, so everybody knows who you are. For the past 15 plus years, Mike, I'm not sure how long it's been close to 15. Mike has been the manager of the Performing Arts Center and has worked to improve the facility and the operations of the theater. He has been involved in improvement projects such as upgrading lighting in the stage in the theater, sound equipment, and safety aspects of the theater. He has managed countless rentals to outside community groups, including Indian Hill Music, dance recitals, and cultural events. Mike is a retired teacher from Littleton and the Groton Dunstable schools. And when he retired from there and he took this job as what was going to be a part-time job, I don't think it was just a part-time job. He spent lots of nights and weekends managing those events. Mike, we thank you for your dedicated years of service and wish you all the best as you move forward. And thank you very much.
Oh, Mike, you're muted.
You're muted.
Okay, I just want to say thank you. This came about because it was time. The theater has not been, functioning since March of last year, and it doesn't look like it's going to really bounce back until possibly the fall. So as I was thinking about it, I said to myself, this is probably a good time at 73, to say, hey, it's time to just sit back a little bit and maybe do some stuff around the yard and with the grandkids. So that's my plans. And I
Excellent.
thank you. I had a wonderful 15 plus years working in Littleton, and I will miss a lot of you. I hope to be able to stop by and at least say hi at some point. But
You're welcome anytime in the theater, Michael.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, and thank you so
Again,
much.
thank you. You've done a lot of work, and it's taken a lot off of my plate. So I thank you very much for all of that work.
Okay, well, you're welcome, and thank you, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I don't think people necessarily who aren't directly involved in dance recitals and music recitals understand that building is a busy building on weekends and at night. I spent a lot of hours up there when I was coaching, and Mike was a constant presence in there. The whole goal was for Mike and I to make sure we didn't set the alarm off on each other.
Right.
We didn't always manage to avoid that, but we did it. We did. Our batting average was pretty high. It was pretty good. It's a great facility. People were very fortunate in Littleton that people want to take advantage of it, and it was Mike's work that allowed people to want to come back year after year. It's a great facility, and you did a great job helping us maintain it as busy as it was over those 15 years. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I'd like to add on top of that, he trained a lot of students Brian O'Neill, Adam DeCoste, all were trained under Michael. And both of those guys are and still will be involved in the theater and the operation. So again, thank you.
Well, that's good to hear.
All right.
All right, thank
All
you.
right.
Now,
Thanks, Mike.
How do I leave this meeting?
I'll send you on your way.
You send me on my way.
I'll send you
All
on your
right,
way.
Dorothy.
Just
Thank
cue the music. Exit stage left.
All
Enjoy
right.
life. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So are we good for recognition?
Yes, we are.
All right. Thank you. All right. We're going to start. Our first presentation will be state, local public health metrics. And I think we have Katrina with us. There she is.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Katrina.
Dorothy can send me on my way soon, too. All right. Where am I here? I'm assuming you see them today. Things have changed in my Zoom. Okay. So here are the four main metrics that we keep talking about. If you look at the very end of the case trend lines and the percent positivity trend lines, you'll see that they're both ticking up a little bit. But the good news is that the hospitalizations and deaths continue to decline, albeit at a slower rate than we have been seeing like a month ago. So things are, you remember last week when I said things are starting to shift? We're starting to see that in the actual numbers this week. And so the other thing I want to share, which I haven't shared in a number of weeks now, is the landing page for the state's DPH dashboard. And I want to show this because there's this section of cases by age during the last 2-week period. And if you recall, last fall, we were seeing most of the cases in the 20 to 29 age groups, and then in the parent age group, if you will, the middle age.
Katrina, we can see more of your verbiage than we can of the actual table.
Oh, interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I told you it's changed. All right, try. That was weird. How's that one?
That's better.
Big. All right.
Yes.
Thanks for letting me know. Because I also don't talk to my notes all the time. So this is good. All right. So what I was trying to say is that this on the landing page. So let me go back one, I guess, because the key is we will build. Not meaning to share. I mean to present. Okay, so the last couple of weeks, you're seeing that shift in the cases up and the test positivity up, but you're not seeing it in the hospitalizations and the deaths. So that when cases are going up now, they're going up in younger age brackets. And there's a couple reasons for this. First, we've prioritized vaccinations among the older age groups who are at more risk for severe COVID. So this is a good thing that the cases aren't coming up in those age groups again. And it's this number of cases is pretty similar to what it was for last fall for the younger age groups, but you'll notice that the 20 to 29-year-olds are actually lower than the 0 to 19-year-olds at this point. They're actually similar rates. So this is just something to keep our eyes on as we're rolling out vaccines to aid the people who are age 16 plus. But so this is a shift from last fall. And now when we're looking at local data, this week, Littleton had 22 cases for the last 2-week period, which was March 7th to March 20th. 2 weeks ago, we had 17 cases. So that is a slight increase. We're still in the yellow. This is our 5th week in the yellow. So that's a good sign. We're kind of still on that flat and wavering, right? I'm hoping we're going to waver here for a while. So this is when we convert those number of cases to a rate so we can compare our metrics to other areas around us. Littleton's rate was 16.1 per 100,000. So similar to the case count, this is slightly higher than 2 weeks ago. And then for all the other areas that we track, everything tilted up just slightly this week. So we are slightly higher than we were 2 weeks ago across the board. Similarly, test positivity, so the number of positive tests over the number of tests conducted. The number of tests is stable. We consistently have just over 1,200 tests per week, but test positivity was 1.77%, which again is slightly higher than compared to 2 weeks ago. All of the other areas also slightly increased. So everything is trending in the same directions and tilting back up. So when we look into some school level data, this is the DESE reports of cases among in-person learners. There was a marked increase in the number of cases among students reported this week, but not a similar proportion among staff. So there were 682 cases among students this week and 228 reported among staff. And I want everyone to remember these are number of cases, not rates. And actually I went to go see if DESE has updated the denominator. And they've actually not updated it since they started publishing these back in October, whenever they started. So it's the same denominator that's on the data file, which is unfortunate. So we can't see how many more in-person learners are coming back. We know schools are bringing people back, so there'll be more cases among the student population and probably not among the staff population. The staff's pretty stable. So those are just things to keep in mind. And the other thing that's happening is staff are eligible to be vaccinated. So hopefully staff are getting access to vaccines and are in that process of gaining immunity against the viruses, which will slow that number. When we look at clusters, so once you have more cases in your population of people in a setting, so a school, you're more likely to have a cluster form or an in-school transmission event. So this, for the period of February 21st to March 20th, there were 16 clusters reported by DPH. An average number of cases per cluster was 4.7. And the average number of close contacts is 5.8. These are very similar averages to what we were seeing over the holidays, like the Thanksgiving, Christmas time holidays. So these numbers of cases and close contacts in these clusters hasn't changed. It will be interesting to see how this shifts as more in-person learners return over the next few weeks. So these are Littleton's health notification letters that we all receive. And Littleton has consistently had 1 to 2 cases reported a week for the last 4 weeks or so, which are the same weeks that we were yellow. So in the yellow, we would expect 1 to 2 cases arising in this population under our current hybrid model. So this is like expected. We expect to see cases because there's cases circulating in our community. The good news is these are spread out among all the 4 schools. There's not a cluster among one school. So that's a good thing to see. And then as of last week, Lynn reported to me that there have been 10 days of pool testing and all of the pools have come back negative. And this is really reassuring and exciting news to me that we haven't had these or pre-symptomatic cases arising in our school building under our current hybrid model. This is a period of time where our community rates were declining and lower. So under these conditions, we're doing a really good job. Our mitigation's really working. So the pooled testing program will be really helpful to see how things change as we add more kids into the school, as our rates, if our rates rise, or when our rates rise, things like that. We'll see what happens and see if that changes. So this is a good tool to use to make sure that our schools, our mitigation is solid. Speaking of tools, here's the layer of cheese, and all the graphs that I just presented showed that cases and test positivity are trending higher across the state. The levels are actually similar to where we were just before Thanksgiving. So remember, that was a big escalating event. People are mixing more. The governor opened up twice this last month. He just opened to phase 4, part 1 this week. And we have more kids going back to in-person learning, which is valuable and should be happening. And especially under mitigation, so with mitigation. And then spring activities are also starting soon. So there's a lot of stuff starting in the next few weeks where people will be mixing more. And with kids going back to school, parents might be going back to the offices or to jobs, things like that. So that might change our adult mixing patterns as well. So we also have Passover this weekend, Easter next weekend, and April breaks on the horizon. So these are all things where people are moving. When people mix, cases spread. So we also have the 3 variants, which have all been shown to be more transmissible and to have more severe outcomes. So these are concerning. So we just want to keep using these layers of cheese, especially the ones that we know work really well. So one thing we know has helped us is making sure that if you don't feel well, you do not enter the school buildings. So doing that symptom check with your kid every day is really important to keeping cases out of school. The other thing is masks, making sure they fit well and they're high quality and they protect you and they protect those around you. So just keep using those in every setting outside of your household. And then we've got pooled testing. So this is another really important tool. I'm going to keep saying it to help us keep our eyes on what happens in the buildings, especially as we bring all these new learners back at a higher density. And it would be great to keep finding negative. That is my hope, is that we keep having negative pools. That is what I want to see. So not only will pool testing programs help our schools and keeping them safe, but it also, knowing your kid is negative and you're sending them to activities, all the activities are safer as well, even if they're not school activities. So if you've registered your child for in-person learning, I highly encourage you to consent to join the pooled testing program if you haven't already. And if you have concerns, Lynn Snow and her team of nurses are fantastic at talking through what your concerns are and making accommodations if necessary. I won't make you listen to Eric. All right, so one of the most critical things us adults and parents can do is to get vaccinated when it's our turn. The data that's coming out of about all these vaccines that we have authorized by the FDA are really, really encouraging. And they suggest not only do they protect against severe outcomes, so hospitalization and death, but they also are showing that they reduce spread of COVID across communities. So this is just one of these best ways that we can kind of create a fire block between people is getting vaccinated. And that will help reduce our rates for town, which will help reduce the rates among people in the school population. So while we wait our turns for vaccines, it's really important to keep using those layers of mitigation when we're around people who are not vaccinated, who are not in our household. So wearing your mask, keeping distance, limiting group gatherings, and getting tested if you have symptoms or a known exposure is really important. It's easier to get tested these days, actually, so to access testing. So I really encourage people, if you think you're sick, go get tested. And the other thing that is, like I said earlier, Easter, Passover are these next few weekends, and April break's coming, and we know that people are vaccinated, so that can kind of change. We can actually see family. But we know spread can happen over the holidays. We've seen that before. So when people let their guard down, they stop doing all the layers. So the same layers of cheese that we talked about for the winter holidays remain important. Masks, distance, improving ventilation by meeting outside or opening windows and doors. Getting tested before your gathering is a great option. Following the travel advisory. The gathering limits are still 10 indoors and 25 outdoors on private property. And the more layers you use, the less likely there'll be transmission at your gathering. And if you're going to a place of worship, please just make sure you're doing everything you would in public. So the mask, the distance, everything you can to keep everyone in that church or wherever safe. So, and again, most importantly, stay home if you have symptoms or you have a known exposure. It's really important not to potentially enter into a public setting if you have known symptoms or exposures. So enjoy the holidays, visit those vaccinated relatives, be as safe as possible. There, with the vaccines starting to come and actually our supply starting to increase slowly here, and the number of people eligible to be vaccinated increasing, there's a lot of hope in the next few months that we will have, things will look very different. But this right now is not the time to relax. So please keep using all those layers of mitigation that you have at our as our tools, because right now we don't want spread to take off because it will make the vaccines less able to do their job quickly. So we want things to be open. We want the schools to be safe. So just keep doing it right now. Don't change too much. And that's it for tonight.
All right. Thank you, Katrina. As always, questions or comments from anyone? All right. We were all at the Board of Health meeting last night, so this is round two for us. So I think
Privilege of hearing me twice.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Katrina. We really appreciate it. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right. Next on the agenda is we have to reconsider the draft calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. Just give me a second. I want to get to that on my packet. So the reason that we are revisiting this is when we looked at it initially, we realized that by starting on September 1st, which is a Wednesday, that's when the teachers come back. The teachers will come back. The contract states that they don't start before September. So they'll start on Professional Development Day, coming back to the buildings on Wednesday, September 1st. That brings the students in on Thursday, the 2nd. And then right now the calendar has them coming to school on Friday, the 3rd. Then we go into Labor Day weekend. They get Monday off. And we come back on the 7th. Normally, what we try to do is have the professional staff day coming back, then 2 days of learning. Then we try to have a 4-day weekend. The administration, because we have to start on that Wednesday instead of starting on Tuesday, going to school Wednesday, Thursday, get Friday and Monday off. If they did that, they would have extended the school year. Would go until right now, based on the calendar, the last day would be June 16th, which is a Thursday. We did ask the LEA to consider if they would consider starting on August 31st, which would be the Tuesday. Because of the way the contract's written, we can't unilaterally require them to do that. We had asked them, they did. We appreciate they gave it full consideration. But after polling their membership, they decided they would prefer to leave it as it is and that they would start on September 1. So the choices in front of the school committee right now are to leave the calendar as it's been presented to us by the administration, which would mean that it would only be a 3-day long weekend for Labor Day, what we get out on June 16th. We could decide to give them, just have the students come in for 1 day on Thursday, still get the 4-day weekend, go to June 17th. But that would mean that they would come in for 1 day of schooling and then take a 4-day weekend and then come back. So pros and cons to that, how you think about that. The other alternative would be not to start class at all in that first week, and we would have the students start on.
Mike, do you want me to pull that calendar up on the screen?
Yeah, actually, that would help. I can see mine, but it might help other people visit. We could have them start on September 7th, which would mean that they would lose the 2nd and the 3rd on the current calendar, which would mean we would add 2 days to the end of the year on the calendar, which means that we would go into, we would already be on June 21st as the last day of school, barring no weather outages, missed days for weather or other events. What What I'd like to do tonight is see if we can reach consensus as a school committee, and then rather than vote it, just let the consensus be known to the public, let everybody think about it till our next meeting, and then vote it at the next meeting. So at this point, I've kind of tried to convey what our options are, and I would like to see what the school committee thinks. Actually, before we do that, I'd actually like to have Dr. Clenchey and the administration weigh in and see what their recommendation is, and then we'll have a discussion, and then if we have any public input, we'll listen to that as well. So, Dr. Clenchey, what are your thoughts about this?
Thank you. We took some time revisiting the calendar, and at the end of it, we felt that the calendar that we presented to you would be the one that we would endorse. I mean, we're obviously open to options, but we like the idea of getting our students back as soon as possible for the 2 days and get them acclimated, so to speak. And you never know what happens from year to year in terms of weather and storms. And it would be nice if we were fortunate enough to be finished prior to the last 2 weeks of June. No guarantees, of course, but
All right. Steve, I'm going to ask you to just bring that calendar down. I think everybody else has it in front of them. It's just hard for me to follow see everybody. Excellent. All right. Thoughts from the school committee based on what we've heard? Brad?
Yeah, I do think you're right that pushing this decision off for a week may make sense because for some reason our attendance is down by like 100 from usual. I don't know why it would be lower this week than previous weeks. But this is a place where I think families may have some desire to have some input. It makes no sense to me to come back for 1 day and then have a 4-day weekend. So I would rather either have them have the 2 days in and get some semblance of a routine of a 3-day weekend or come back afterwards. Starting after Labor Day is attractive, but ending in late June is less attractive. So I could be persuaded to do either one. But right now, I'd probably side for the calendar the administration is supporting.
All right, Matt?
As hard as it is for me to admit, I agree with Brad. The coming in for 1 day and then having 4 days off, I think would be a wasted day. I can see merit in both options, but if the administration prefers that we keep it as is, then I'm fine with that also.
All right. Justin or Timlin? Timlin?
Find my mute button. I have to agree. I mean, I was hoping that they would come back and we could do the 2 days because I'm afraid that the attendance on the 3rd might be down. But if the administration thinks that's how we should keep it, I would go. I mean, I don't want to go until the 21st. I just think it gets long in the school's days. And then if we have a bad winter, which we may, seeing this winter was kind of mild. So yeah, I would say that to leave it the way it is would be okay with me.
All right. Justin?
I tend to agree with everyone. I think it's probably wise to start as presented. I do, not for this year, but I think probably for years, maybe next year, I do want to discuss the 12 professional days in addition to the other half days associated with parent-teacher conferences and the like. And also, I'm assuming that the way the calendar works, we're roughly going to run into this every 7 years with we can't start before September 1st. So potentially we need to look at a long-term solution here because we're going to run into Wednesday being September 1st every, 7 years you factor in the leap year. I don't know how often it's going to happen, but potentially maybe we should have a little bit of flexibility in starting late August in the event that the calendar year lays out this way. So just kind of some food for thought for possibly next year. Obviously a little too late in the game for this year, but just some ideas that I've been thinking about and heard from some other folks.
Brad?
Yeah, we haven't done a survey in a couple of days, so maybe I'm kidding. Yeah, and so Justin's right. I think as we're looking forward, another thing that I think is calendar related and has to be negotiated is I think the school committee is going to spend some time thinking about start times, which I think is as we're looking at the calendars, looking at this kind of school day and school year. I think we've gotten a lot of feedback from some parents, both as a school committee and as individuals. We've experienced it as parents. Seeing what the extra 15 minutes or 20 minutes of sleep and rest can mean for our kids. It's not going to affect this next calendar, but as we're thinking as a committee moving forward, that's something we're going to talk about with our partners in the LEA, I think, and as a committee.
All right, thank you. I agree too. I think that coming back for one day is not a good idea. I think that giving, not starting till after Labor Day, it just pushes us too far into June. So I think we have clear consensus that right now we're leaning as a committee towards supporting the calendar as it's been presented by the administration. But we will take a final vote on this in 2 weeks. And anybody in the community who feels like they want to weigh in on it, if they're not here tonight and they hear about it, feel free to email the school committee. Obviously, our community knows how to do that. If they didn't know prior to this year, they've taught themselves quite well. But we're always happy to hear the input. It actually helps us a lot. It really helps make it easier for us to think about what the public is asking for. And sometimes that's the easiest way to make the decision, just lean towards what the feedback we're getting. I will say in terms of the point Justin raised, he's right. Like every couple of years, every third year, we face a calendar challenge of one type or another just because of the way the dates fall. And I think it's the calendar is something that the school committee should always kind of keep an eye on, and maybe every 3 or 4 years take a shot at, asking ourselves, is it serving us, our community, our students, our staff the way we expect it to? And if it's not, then, we can consider alternatives. Having said that, I will tell you that getting the community to give any clear direction on the calendar it doesn't happen. You ask them if you want to start before or after Labor Day, 50-50. Do you want 2 vacations in the winter or 1? 50-50. Do you want to get out? Do you want to start, whatever it is, it's always about 50-50. There's pros and cons. So it's difficult to, draw distinctions, but it's a worthwhile effort, and people shouldn't be afraid to, shake it up a little bit. Sometimes that's easy when it's all 50-50 like that. You just try to decide what's best for the students and the staff and is going to have the biggest impact on learning. And you just do that and let the chips fall where they may. So I think Justin's right. I think it is something, and Timlin's right too, or Brad was, it's something that has to start. Like if we think we want to affect a change, we should start in May looking to reach consensus and get a vote in December or January, and then implement the changes for next year. If you miss that, if you push that timeline out, if you wait till September, October, November, you're going to be right back where it's going to be another year is going to go by before you're going to get any change implemented. So you just need to keep that in mind as well. But all right, so that's great. Thank you for that, and we will finalize that at our next meeting. All right, and sorry, let me get caught up. All right. The next topic on the agenda, I actually want to push to the next meeting as well. This is extension of the pool testing. Kelly, can you remind me how long are we getting reimbursed or covered by the state for this?
Until April 18th.
Right. Okay. So the next meeting will give us an opportunity. We'll be getting near the end of that. We'll have gotten 2 more weeks of results. We are going to have a discussion about strategies for increasing the participation. I think it would be worthwhile before we make a final decision on whether or not we want to go to the end of the year. It is to see if we can get that participation level up. If the participation level is up, higher than it is right now, I think that's going to help inform us as to whether or not we think we want to do that. Lynn?
There's also some discussion about DESE supporting it beyond April 18th now. So
Okay.
That's more kind of to be, the commissioner's call mentioned that. So there's going to be more updates about that, I think, in the next week or 2.
Okay. All right. Brad, you some thought?
Yeah, last time we talked about this, I agree. I don't think we should vote on it tonight if we don't have all the information we need about the commissioner or others. But I think we wouldn't part of what we need to do if we're going to evaluate this is figure out what the cost will be. And we don't know how many people will be back into high school. We won't know participation rates for a while. So 2 weeks from now, we'll have more information and we can probably put a number on the cost. And that'd be helpful for me as we make a vote.
All right, Justin?
Yeah, Brad, that's a really good point. Lynn, would you mind trying to have that information for us in a couple weeks at 65% participation with sort of the full in-person population as to what that's going to cost us on a weekly basis?
Sure. Yeah, I did have to do that for Steve. I needed to break that down based on averages of what we've been doing so far. So it would be really easy just to project that out. I can say it's less than we had originally thought it was going to be when we predicted the cost at the beginning.
Okay. All right, great. So we'll make sure that's on the agenda for the next meeting. But segueing into the next agenda item is we'd like to have a talk about some strategies we think might be worthwhile to increase the level of participation. I think we all agree that with the more students coming into the building, the benefit of this program will be more pronounced. So in getting more people to participate in it will actually also make the benefit more pronounced. I guess I'd like to start a little bit with the administration and see if you guys have put some thought into this, if you have any ideas of if there's things we're already doing, we'd like to, be reminded of that. If there's things that are in the pipeline that you guys are getting ready to roll out, we'd like to know. And if you don't have things in the pipeline, but you think you might want to try, that would be great. And then based on that, we'll see if we have any wonderful ideas. And again, if there's any public participation on that, we'd be open to hearing that as well. So do you want to start with Lynn or Dr. Clenchey?
I can start. We're always thinking of ways to encourage our students to take part in our pool testing program. As I've mentioned many times, we feel that it's an effective mitigation strategy. It gives us some data that we don't have. We send home, pool testing updates every Friday evening with tidbits of information. We've had a public forum, family forum, and went over what we're doing, the purpose, and rationale, and actually had a video showing students actually doing the pool test. I know our AD has talked to the coaches, and the coaches have talked to our athletes as well. And we did take a look at some of the numbers of our participants for our athletes, and certainly it's not 60%, so it's lower than that. So we're still brainstorming, thinking of other ways, but I really feel pretty strongly that the more students we have back in school will have a natural effect on increasing the participation rate of pool testing. So kind of anxious to see what happens in the next 2 weeks with our K-8 population starting on Monday. I'm not sure whether it would be valuable to have another forum or not. We just continue to urge parents to contact us. We're more than willing to talk about the benefits of pool testing, and our students have quite a nice routine right now. It's just, it's quick, it's easy, it's efficient, and we have the process down. As I mentioned last night at the Board of Health meeting, our district has been selected by Shaw Foundation to be involved in a national conference on pool testing. They're actually showcasing our district, and Lynn's going to be representing us next week at that meeting. So we've done a good job implementing it. Now it's a matter of continuing to fine tune it and doing whatever we can to increase the number of participants. I guess one last thing. I mean, as administrators, we go and get tested with the kids. We're not in our offices when we're getting tested. We're in schools, and hopefully that's sending a real positive signal as well.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Do you want to add to that?
So just as far as the percentage, I mean, it's tough because we've got this moving denominator, right? Because the number of kids who are coming in person is increasing. So the denominator that we were using originally is different than now. But what I can say, which is reassuring, is that just from when we started pool testing, we had 501 consents. we currently have 728 consents. That's staff and students combined. So there's been a notable increase. We're changing a big variable by everybody going in. And so I hope and would expect that we're going to see more people sign up for pool testing that may have been comfortable because we're hybrid and 6 feet of distance, and that now it's going to be more meaningful for them to participate in pool testing. So I think we'll see another increase. I also am eager to see what that percentage turns out to be over the next couple weeks. We have gotten a lot of questions, a lot of parents reaching out, asking about pool testing, and it is translating to increases from week to week. So we've had some pretty decent increases. So it's climbing slowly. But I think once we're all in, hopefully we're going to see a pretty statistically significant increase. That's my hope.
Brad, before you ask your question, I want to ask a question. Lynn, are we anticipating any changes to the way we administer the pool testing relative to having students in the building 5 days a week? Or are the students who are currently getting tested on Monday going to continue to get tested on Monday, and the students who are tested on Thursday are going to continue to get tested on Thursday?
It's not broken, so we're not going to fix it. We've met with the nurses and gotten input from the principals, and it seems to be that we want to continue to do it 2 times a week, keep doing it as we are. It's kind of working. So even though we'll have all of the students in, the students that were in cohort A will continue to be tested on Mondays. The students who are in cohort B will continue to be tested on Thursdays. Hopefully we'll be able to capture more. So if there were students that are absent, because that's impacting the number of specimens that we collect to probably most at the high school. Just there's more students that might be remote for a Monday, but then they're in, so they miss pool testing, they miss their chance that week. So I think that's going to be helpful, having all of the students in all of the days. So we might be able to squeeze them into a pool on Thursday potentially, but we're going to keep it, we're going to just keep doing it the way we're doing it because it's working.
Okay, thank you. Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. First, Lynn, congratulations to you, your staff, the nurses, for being selected to present at that panel, that national panel. That's great. It shows that we're seen as a district is doing this well. So thank you for that. Kelly, you mentioned the possibility of a second forum. I don't think you necessarily need a second forum, but I wonder if we're doing any targeted outreach to the families that may not have thought a lot about this before, those who are coming from remote to in-person. Something maybe targeted just for them, because maybe they weren't participating before, but now, if I recall correctly, we have 80, 90 kids coming into the building and that maybe hadn't been before. That may be a population that's been very cautious and would be eager to know as much as they could about what's happening in the schools. So that may be a chance to recruit some more people. So just a thought, no need to respond. And I guess the last question, Lynn, just to make sure I understand this. So using the 2 cohorts, so a classroom, a 3rd grade classroom will have roughly half its students be tested in cohort A, in-person students, and probably half in cohort B. Is that?
Right now, about half of half, given our participation.
Gotcha. Yeah. Of those participating, about half would be in one class. Okay. So we'd get 2 looks at a class, but never a complete look at a class throughout a week?
No, because we don't necessarily have, we're not doing class pools. We're doing kind of random spread across. So we're getting really nice kind of cross-section samples.
Thank you for that.
Justin, the wheels are turning. I can hear from here.
I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, to Mike.
I wouldn't say you're thinking out loud, but you're making noise while you're thinking.
Is there any benefit to maybe switching? I get it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But is there any benefit to maybe switching it up so that you do have the entire class pool together? Because if you end up with a positive pool, and odds are that we might end up with a positive pool before the school year ends, we would immediately know, the other half of the class might not have to be identified as a quarantine situation and then retest. Like everyone's going to retest. And then there might be it might shorten up the time frame as to figure out who was a close contact, who's actually positive, and who's really negative. Just some food for thought. And then I have other things to discuss, but I'm wondering if it makes sense to switch it up based upon only testing half the class. If there is a positive, then the other half of the class doesn't know if they were sitting close enough or had exposure, that type of thing.
So there's a lot of variables that come into play with forming the pools. It comes down to like how many in a particular class have consented. We need to keep our pools. The pools need to be with 5 to 10. We need to also make sure that we're maximizing the cost efficacy of the pools and the pool testing, even though we're not paying for it right now. But the pools do need to have between 5 and 10 samples. We really do want them to have 10 samples because we also do run the risk of, if we have less samples in the vial, they're not being it could be invalid because there's a couple that aren't collecting enough of the mucus on them. So getting to that 8 to 10 in the pool is really important too. And then ultimately there is going to be a skew because there's going to be classes that might not have enough. So we're going to have to mix them with another class. And then there's also another factor, which could be identifying if you've got a class. And so spreading them out, there's a lot of advantages. We talked a lot about this, and our original plan was to do class pools, have the teacher in the pool with the class and the half, and then be able to test the whole group and know. And we kind of went back and forth on that, and ultimately decided to spread the samples out across the pools.
Okay, fair enough. I totally get it. You guys have thought about it, and I accept that and respect that. Okay, for me to jump in on my
pool dance that we're doing.
Yeah. Can I jump in on my other thoughts on the pool testing thing? So I think the hurdle here is people associate pool testing with a potential risk and very little benefit. So there's still this negative stigma that, geez, if my kid ends up in a pool, a positive test, he or she might miss something, even though they're not the positive person. And what we really need to make clear to everybody, and I know that we're trying to send the message, but we need to keep banging the drum, is that you're really not going to miss anything because the opportunity to retest is readily available. Same day. If it's not the same day, it's the next morning, and you're not going to miss, you're very likely not going to miss that activity. You're not going to miss a school day. So that's eliminating the negative, and then reinforcing the positive is that by opting into testing, it's okay if there's transmission in the community, likely you're going to get some cases in the school system. That's just the way it works. But what we're trying to do is eliminate any transmission in the school system. And that's key to keeping this whole thing going. So by everyone testing, you're adding a layer of cheese, and you're eliminating the possibility of a cluster, which could shut down an entire classroom or an entire hallway, or potentially an entire school, God forbid. So there's really no negative, and there's a huge positive. And I just think we need to keep banging that drum until everyone gets it. In terms of incentivizing people to do it, like real quickly, I just jotted down, it's probably different for the different age groups, but maybe there's a weekly drawing for a gift card if you're in pool testing, which might work for some of the lower age children, and maybe some of the older age children wouldn't care. But maybe the older kids, 9 to 12, if you're even having Spirit Week this year, maybe they can get Spirit Week points. It can be a class competition, or I'm not even sure if kids pay for football tickets this year, but maybe they can get credits at the snack bar, or maybe their seniors, the cap and gown can be free, or maybe every student that's in can get a free yearbook. So there are very inexpensive ways in which we can just try to get sort of some morale or some boost to this. And if there's something out there that's free and it's to benefit everyone, I think maybe you'll see some parents sign up for it or ask their children to participate. So I'm sure there are many other ways to do it, but those are just a couple ideas that I came up with real quick. That's it on that topic.
Thank you, Justin. Anybody else? Cheryl?
If I could just add one piece, sometimes we've been advertising the pool testing in the weekend updates in the nurses section. And people often complain that things get lost in the weekend updates. So I'll just say to the other principals, it might be time for us to send this out again separately. So our weekend update goes, but then the pool testing is a separate email that goes just with that information. We might be at a good point to do that again. I know we've done that in the past, but we might be at a good time to send a separate email again now.
All right, thank you, Cheryl.
I'd like to just piggyback on one of the things Justin said. We continue to dispel the rumor, for lack of a better word, that if you're in a positive pool, you're going to miss a lot of school or you're going to miss athletics. I mean, we're very fortunate to have been approved to administer Binax now, rapid test, and we're ready to go. So anything that any of us can do. I mean, I talk about this all the time. So as school committee members, if we all make sure we continue to talk about this, if it is a concern, word of mouth is one of the best ways to advertise when you're trying to promote something. So I think we really need to continue to do that. I mean, if we need to actually do a Binax Now test during pool testing, I'll certainly agree to do one, and I'm sure a few of my colleagues would do that as well, just to demonstrate that it isn't an invasive test at all. But this is a mitigation strategy that's going to help us continue with full in-person learning. And as Katrina pointed out tonight, the variants are in Massachusetts, and we've done a good job up to this point in time with our mitigation factors, but it's definitely not a time to let our guard down. If anything, we need to be vigilant in making sure that we continue to do everything possible to keep our schools and communities safe. And pool testing is, in my opinion, a powerful mitigation factor.
All right, thank you, Dr. Clenchey. Anybody else? Brett?
I just want to reinforce what Cheryl said. I think that's a great idea, Cheryl. I think if this is an inflection point for our school system, we're about to have grades, K through 8 back in full time, 5 days. This is a time to really recruit people to do this. I think it'd be great if y'all could send that out as a separate message. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Timlin?
I'm just wondering, a thought just came in my head. Can we send out those reverse calls to families to remind them to sign up if they haven't? Sometimes parents don't see the emails and they don't, like Cheryl said, where it gets lost. But if they get a phone call, they may answer it and be like, oh yeah, I forgot to sign up for that. Just a thought. I don't know if we could.
That's a good idea. We could certainly do a Blackboard message next week when our K-8s are back, and not only do cell phone, we can do text as well, and emails. So that's not a bad idea. So we can certainly work that into what we do on a weekly basis. We'll do it next week for sure.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Personally, I think that a constant level of messaging is important. I know that a lot of times it gets lost in the shuffle, but I think because we're going to transition and bring all these kids back, and families are going to kind of reevaluate how their school week goes and how the rest of their school year is going to go. I think that Lynn's right. I think it'll be very beneficial to try to take advantage of that transition. So I think over the next couple of weeks, I think it would be very worthwhile for us to, for the administration to keep targeting that messaging and try to be as effective as possible. Kelly, talking about like that email, text, phone type of strategy, I think, I would maybe wait until the second week. So we're coming back on the 29th, right? I'm looking at my calendar. So maybe on April 5th, right? Everybody settled down for a week. We've got a week under our belts. They figured out when they got to get up in the morning and the buses and all this kind of stuff. And we can think about that. So maybe think about that. I like Justin's idea of maybe we can incentivize at a grade appropriate level and come up with some ideas for that. But I also think that the idea that we can help the community understand that the more people participate, the higher the likelihood we are going to keep full in-person instruction going on. And, we were getting pushed to do it, rightfully so. We got there, but it's incumbent on the community to do their part, right? And to help them understand that if you wanted it, you told us you wanted it, we gave it to you. How are we going to keep it? Let's get more participation in the pool testing, because this is not a given, and people should not feel like we've crossed the finish line and everything's going to sail forward. It's possible that even without a higher level of participation in the pool testing, that will happen. It's also possible that it won't happen. Those variants are out there. There's a lot of opening besides school that's happening. It's entirely possible. There were articles in the news today about districts across the country that are struggling after reopening. They've had to retrench. They've had to go backwards. So the goal is maybe the message would be, let's not go backwards. Let's stay where we are, and pool testing can be a big part of that. So I appreciate the input. I don't think we need to do a whole lot more at the moment other than what we've just talked about, because I think we're going to have an opportunity to see what the reopening does for it just organically. Once that we've gotten past that, I think we should, again, reevaluate where we are and think about what we want to do, and that'll, again, help inform our decision about whether or not we want to continue to participate in the program through the end of the school year. And that's a decision we're going to make in a couple of weeks. So we'll just keep an eye on all of this as we go. Justin, you have a thought?
Yeah, just the sort of the follow-up was on the staff level. So Lynn, is the staff still around the same level as the students, like somewhere between 60 and 65%? Do you think, roughly?
The staff consents are a little bit higher than students. We're in the 50s for students. We're in the 60s for staff.
Okay, move 50s. So we talked a lot about maybe incentivizing the students, but I would be all for like a 4-way school contest where, once a month at the PTA, or we fundraise for lunch for the teachers that they have the highest participation for pool testing or something like that. I'm not saying that everyone has to do it, but we might as well reward those that are helping pull the weight within the community. So that's all.
All right. I'd like to just jigger the agenda a little bit, because we have a agenda item on there, pool testing for athletes and extracurricular students participating in extracurricular activities. So I think we'll just continue on and get that out of the way, because it segues. I'll say that we had a joint meeting with the Board of Health last night, and this was a topic of discussion. There had been some talk from the Board of Health about either the school committee or the Board of Health conceivably making participation in the pool testing program mandatory for students that wanted to participate in extracurricular activities, including athletics. After having a discussion last night with the Board of Health, the consensus was that as a school committee, we would prefer to focus on a broad-based effort to get participation in the pool testing up across the board, not just on a subset, and actually a small subset of students, high school athletes. And the Board of Health was supportive of that. They understood that we were going to try for a broader based effort. They were supportive of that, and felt that was worthwhile. And given that, they didn't seem that they felt the need to continue to debate the idea of mandatory participation as a condition for participation, mandatory participation in the pool testing as a condition for participating in extracurricular activities. I'll just ask if any school committee members have any other comments or thoughts about that. Like I say, it was a joint meeting, so we kind of got our 2 cents worth in last night with the Board of Health. Justin?
I think that's a good
Oh,
plan,
Matt,
Mike.
go ahead. No, it's okay, Matt.
I think that's a good plan. I just believe in keep giving people information. I don't think that there's any need at this time to require anybody to do it or to coerce anyone into participation.
All right, Justin?
Yeah, I think there's some consensus on this. I have a bit of a problem with sort of targeting our student athletes to, as a special class of individuals that have to do this. I think everyone should consider it, and everyone should lend a hand here. I would be very open to inviting the captains of the current season to a school committee meeting, because I'd like to hear from them as to what the thought process is behind opting in or opting out. I'd love to hear from them. I don't have a connection to I don't think any of those individuals, so I'd love to just kind of like a community outreach type thing. I think maybe we could gain some valuable insight. And in terms of our high school athletes, like where do you stop? Do you ask the middle school athletes that are doing club sports? Do you ask the elementary school athletes that are doing town sports to participate? I mean, I would like everyone to opt in, but I think I have a hard time with requiring certain students to force it upon them.
All right. All right. Appreciate that. We can tick that off the agenda. All right. Next is an update on the in-person return. Dr. Clunchy?
Well, thank you. So I mentioned earlier on in the meeting, all 3 schools are set and anxious to start on Monday. I'd like to hear from the principals, though. We had a great meeting today and had an opportunity to talk about some of the challenges that we had to overcome to make sure that we were ready. I seem to always start with Shaker Lane, so I'm going to reverse the order tonight. Leave the high school, though, to the end, since they have until April 12th. So I'd like to start with the middle school.
Sure. This kind of messes with my whole Jan Brady mentality when it comes to middle school. I'm not used to starting first. This is awesome. No, we've had a very productive couple of weeks in terms of our plans and getting ready for Monday. No joke, it has been a ton of work for everybody involved, but we are very confident in our ability come Monday morning at 7:20 a.m. that this thing is going to work like we anticipate. We are in the process of over planning right now. We want to make sure that we are getting every possible scenario and contingency that we can think of prepped in case something happens, so that we're not surprised. Yeah, for example, tonight I sent emails to every student returning next week with their lunch assignments, where they'll be sitting, whether they're the cafeteria or in the gym. So there's no craziness Monday morning with students trying to figure out where they're going. It's just things like that. So in terms of the logistics, we're in a very good place. We've managed to put desks in all the rooms. Everything fits. 3 feet of distance in some, a little bit more in others. We have our lunch situation split up, where about half the kids will be in the cafeteria, half the kids will be in the gym. We're going to take full advantage of the weather every time we can to get kids outside, because we want to definitely use that to our advantage. The beauty of the middle school model, as I've said before, is that, we didn't have to make wholesale changes because of the way that we constructed it to begin with. It was really just based on numbers. How many can a classroom hold, and what do we do? So, I know our teachers are working very hard, because this is going to be a change in their instructional practice. They've been doing something for 6 months, and now we're going to change it. It's not it's not a complete change, but it is going to be different. When you're used to having 4, 8, 10, 12 kids in front of you, and now you're going to have 18, 20, 22, there are going to be some changes there, but they are working incredibly hard to prepare themselves for Monday. So all things considered, I really like where we are. We've got a few polishing moments to put on things tomorrow, but we're going to be ready to go on Monday.
Great. Thank you, Jason.
You bet.
Cheryl?
I agree with Jason. this has been an exhausting process because we've been really working at warp speed from the day we got the registrations. At Russell Street, we had to look through all of the registration forms like everyone else did and figure out placements first, because we do have placements at all grade levels of students who are out remotely and they're coming back in person. We made all the contacts to their families and then contacts to the teachers. At the elementary level, teachers want to tell their current students that new students are joining their class and get ready and be ready to greet the students. So that has been happening this week. Our classrooms are all set. As Jason said, we're figuring out at Russell Street the overflow for lunch periods. So we have Andrea and I and the custodial staff have been setting up chairs in the cafeteria, in the gym, in our outdoor spaces. I think I'm going to have nightmares about chairs and blue tape for a little while. Our teachers really have worked at warp speed to get everything ready in their classrooms. I have one more set of chairs to set up under the canopy tomorrow. And I think we will be ready to go on Monday. I definitely want to thank the teachers for their hard work getting everything ready. And the custodial staff obviously have been working really hard at all of the buildings to get furniture out of the storage spaces and just moving things around to get everything ready. So I think that we will be in good shape for Monday.
Great. Thank you,
And
Cheryl.
Cheryl, if you don't mind, I'd like to just give a comment because I didn't get to say this in the last meeting, but our custodial staff, I just want to give them such a round of applause because we have 5 large storage containers outside of Littleton Middle School, packed to the gills with desks, chairs, furniture, everything you can imagine. And Sean Ryan has done nothing but work to empty those containers, drag everything into the gym, wipe it down, wash it, move it, haul it, all within a week. I have been thoroughly impressed with our custodial staff and their commitment to getting this done on time. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that because he deserves it. Absolutely.
Can I just piggyback? That's kudos to Sean, yes, but that's happening at all of the schools. So kudos to all of the custodial staff and kudos to Bill as well, because he's also running around hauling supplies back and forth and making sure all of the PPE and the cleaning supplies and the wipes and everything is up to the levels that we need to get schools open next week as well. So yes, thank you. And then when everybody's done, I want to give a little update on busing, but I won't do it now.
All right, yeah, we'll definitely do that, Steve. Thank you. Michelle?
So this is new going at the end, and I had all the notes that would have made Cheryl and Jason's life much easier. So I will go through these, but you've heard it all from what they said. We are pretty much, I love Cheryl's word, warp speed, right? So the stuff that we would typically do over July and August, we did in like a matter of a week and a half. So we've added kindergarten lunches, we've added kindergarten specialists, we've revamped the cafeteria. I want to give a huge kudos to our special education teachers. We are bringing a lot of kids back, a lot of our students with disabilities, and they met Tuesday night until 5 p.m. They met again today, and I met with them to really revamp the service providers' schedules, their schedules, the teaching assistants. So that was a huge undertaking on their part. And, we just talked about it. Our custodians, I feel like if Peter hears me call his name one more time, he's going to hide. Peter and David Marr and Bill, putting up additional hooks so the kids aren't right next to each other. The desks, the chairs, the dots, so the chairs don't move off of the dots and the desks don't move off to the dots. Cheryl's going to dream about blue tape. I'm going to dream about dots in the cafeteria. Robin Healy, I know Steve's going to talk about her, but the bus transportation, getting all that information in Aspen, getting that out to staff. Martha Hull with the Tigers Den update, and our staff just, Jason said it beautifully. They are just working so hard to go from what they have known for the past 5 months into something new. And it's going to take some time. We're all excited, but we got to remember, these are kids. Their brains don't function on excitement like ours do. This is going to take some time for them to get used to being back in a classroom with 20 kids that they're not used to for over a year. So we know that that's going to take some time for these kids to adjust. It's going to be like the first day of school come Monday. But we all have been working so hard, and man, I know that we all cannot wait until to see how this goes off on Monday. We're excited. And I just want to say kudos to everyone for helping out with this.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Yep, so thank you. And Michelle, I agree. Robin has done yeoman's work. Christine Whitcomb from D-Bus as well. They've been working tirelessly to revamp all of the bus routes, all of the bus stops. We had over 120 additional students needing bus transportation. And so we've had to re-examine every stop and every route. We also had to assign every student to a bus in a specific seat. That was a lot of work to make sure that we didn't have 3 kids in seats and multiple kids assigned to the same seat. So there's a lot of work in that. So thank you to Robin and Christine as well, and the rest of the central office staff too. Dorothy and Bettina and Tina, they've all been working like crazy. So 2 additional things. The new adjusted bus routes will be posted on the website Friday afternoon. So make sure parents check those bus routes on Friday for the bus stop for their students. Emails did go out. Again, thank you to Robin. She sent individual emails to every parent with their student's bus number and seat assignment. Those went out, I believe, yesterday. So there was a lot of work on that. Again, we are following DESE guidelines. Those DESE guidelines are on the website. So if there are any parent concerns over what those guidelines and safety protocols are, that information is on the website. High school, I know we're gathering that data now from those registrations. Once we have all of that data from the high school registration and those students, high school students that would like bus and transportation, we will add them to those bus routes as well and notify them. And I just want to remind parents, please remind your students that they have to sit in their designated seats. That's per DESE guidelines. That's for safety. That's for contact tracing. If that's required for some reason, hopefully it's not. But just remind students that they need to sit and stay in those assigned seat numbers. All of the drivers have the list of those seat assignments. I'll also remind all the parents, make sure you send and have the students wear the masks on the bus. And the bus drivers do have additional masks available if the students do need them. They are available. And that's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Steve. John, you want to give us a quick, I know it's not going to be the same type of update, but.
I'm happy to chime in and probably would echo a lot of what's already been said. So thank you to the custodial crew for sure. And just a reminder to the public and everyone, but especially at the high school now, registration is essential. It's not a survey that we're conducting now. What's out there is a registration form to determine who's going to be remote or in person for the remainder of the year. So we sent out a reminder. There was a robocall that went out on Monday. We sent out a reminder just yesterday, and we'll send maybe another reminder if necessary in the morning. Right now, I just went through the list, and it looks like we're waiting on about 60 people to respond. We have a good portion of the enrollment, the student body, who have responded. So thank you for those who have already done so. At this point, we're looking at, preliminary review, 85, it's trending very much in person, 85% or so have selected in person, and about 15% have selected remote thus far, with still waiting for 60 more families to respond. So that's going to require additional work. We anticipated that we would have a high response rate. Probably it's actually a little bit higher, maybe by 5% than we initially thought. But it's all good. We'll make our adjustments based on the classes that we need to, shift. It will be a bit challenging. We have made additional preparations for the cafeteria. I know the chairman and some others may have brought that up. at the previous meeting. So cafeteria preparations are especially important because of the additional distancing that's required per DESI. So that has already been underway. Bus information, as Steve mentioned, and I did speak with Chris Whitcomb this week, is really going to be important. It's part of the registration form if a student is returning in person. So reminder to do that. Thank you to Steve and anyone involved with procuring canopies for the high school. Two have already arrived and will be set up soon, and we'll have the big one again on the front lawn in no short order of time. And one of the things that has emerged as a request from faculty is a request for hotspots for Wi-Fi outside for classroom conducting classes. That's going to be something we're going to have to really look into to see how we can do that, especially as the weather permits and allows for classroom space. So would appreciate obtaining that if feasible. We have to sort of work with the tech team on that, and also with Steve. But that's something that did emerge, additional Wi-Fi coverage, so that if class is conducted outside, it can also be accessible to those who are remote.
All right, thank you, John. Kelly, is there anything you want to piggyback on?
Just one thing. In many ways, for some of our students, this is like starting the first day of school. And I think we all need to remember that as we get closer to Monday. Some of our students have not been in our schools for a year. I mean, many have, but a significant number haven't. So we do have to keep that in mind. And we're certainly anticipating that they're going to show that kind of excitement, the same excitement they do in September. But it's going to be a bit of a change for them to get acclimated to being in school for 6 hours a day, and certainly a little more regimented than it was prior to what they're going to be receiving starting Monday. So we need to keep that in mind. We've had some great conversations at the leadership table in terms of realizing that our students aren't going to transform into, I hate using the word traditional learners, but it is a fitting word to use, where they're back in with each other and will be exposed to significant more structure throughout the day. So we need to be patient as we move forward. It's going to take a week or two for our students to get used to being in class all day in person.
I appreciate that message. It aligns with some comments I wanted to make. Appreciate the principals giving us a rundown of exactly what it took to get this done. And I think Michelle said, right, usually this is spread out over a few weeks, and this was spread out over less than 2 weeks. And it's comparable, right? It's what we're talking about. It's getting all that furniture locked up, back out, cleaned up, positioned correctly, and still meeting the protocols and setting up the schedules, getting the services ready, getting the specials, the unified arts schedule has to get revamped. This is not an insignificant achievement to ramp this up this quickly. We appreciate all the extra time being put in by all of our staff, our custodians, our teachers, our administrators. But given that, and I appreciate the term Jason used, over planning, right? As much over planning as you can do, we're still not going to get it right 100%. There's going to be stuff that we're not anticipating. We're going to maybe have Kelly intimated or underestimated how impactful this transition is going to be on some of our students. And I think it's important that as a school committee, we help the community understand that Kelly said it right, patience, right? The first day isn't going to be perfect. The third day should be better than the first day. The 13th day should be better than the third day. But it's the same idea. When we talked about hybrid learning and remote learning, the school committee did not ask or expect that this was going to be a normal school year. We did not think that this was going to be okay. What we were asking for was that we, as a staff, challenge you guys to mitigate the negative impact on our students, and that's what happened. And it's the same thing. This is not going to be normal 5 days a week of school. The mitigation factors are still there. It's going to impact learning. It's going to impact socialization. It's going to be rough. And we all need to understand that. So if we set our expectations accordingly, I think we can still celebrate that we're here, and we should be celebrating that we're here, and this is awesome. It's going to be great on a relative basis. We're very fortunate that we're going to get this done as quickly as we are, and we should be celebrating that. But at the same time, we should remember that we are still in the middle of a pandemic. This is very impactful, negatively impactful. It's going to take us a long time to recover from this. We're not going to recover from it in April or May or June of this year. That's not going to happen. It'll hopefully start to be more likely to make progress in September, October, and November. But we need to remember that, we're just still mitigating a negative impact of something that we're all struggling to get through. So I think if we balance that, the celebration with the realization, I think that it'll be a better experience for all of us, and also allow our staff to, grow into this with our students. I think that's important. So that's what I have to say about that. If there's any other school committee members that want to chime in after hearing those updates from the principals, I'd welcome that. Brad? Or Matt? Matt, you go first.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I just wanted to say, that you guys are doing an awesome job, and it's couldn't be more excited with. Sorry about the dogs. I couldn't be more excited about how well you guys put this together and how quickly.
Brad?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that and just say that thank you for all that you've done this year, and especially the last couple of weeks. We in the school committee spent a lot of time thinking about this, but we're not in your chairs. We're not in your hallways. We don't know how complex it is. You've given us a sample of it, but we know we're getting a sense of how hard you've been working while doing your jobs in a pandemic. And so just want to say thank you for that. Also, just want to say, I think it's worth it, right? We're still think this is worth it. It's because this will be a big day on Monday. We're glad you're excited. We're glad the kids can be excited. And just say that based on what you've done for the last 6 months, I'm confident you can pull it off. And thank you. Thank you.
All right, Timlin?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you too. You should all be very proud of yourselves and what you've accomplished in such a short time. I know that an article came out today that Dr. Clenchey had sent us that there were, 64 schools that were given extensions for this, and you guys are doing it before time, before the deadline. And all of you should be really proud of yourselves, all the teachers, the administrators, the custodians. It's a really good feeling to be part of this. Thank you.
All right, Justin?
Sure, I'll just echo some of those same words. We're all very thankful for the efforts that everybody from the top down have put forth these last couple weeks to get ready for Monday. The community is excited. No doubt there'll be some nervous energy on Monday, right? It kind of is like a first day of school in March a little bit, which is odd. But to Mike's point, the days are going to get better. And I think that's why it was so important for us to get back as early as we can, so that we can try to have a somewhat of a normal finish to the school year and get acclimated as best we can, so that next year can hopefully be, again, as normal as possible. So, and I know you've done a tremendous amount of planning, and I'm sure you've thought of this, but a couple people have said, geez, there might need to be a couple extra mask breaks, or there are students coming back that have been remote that might not even know how a mask break works, or how we do lunch, or how well. So I'm sure it's been part of the over planning, to use Jason's words, but just want to reiterate that there'll be some nervous energy on Monday, and might have to walk through, kind of do an orientation in March under the circumstances. So again, thanks very much. The community is super excited. Everyone's proud of you guys and gals, and you should be proud of yourself. So thanks again.
All right, thank you, everyone. We thought it would be worthwhile, given that we're, going to have so many more students in the building on a daily basis, to have the administration kind of give us an update on protocols, based on if there are positive cases, how the contact tracing is going to go, what it means, if you're a close contact, things like that. So, Dr. Clenchey or Lynn, I think you're going to lead out on that.
Yeah, thank you. dawned on us many times. We live the protocols every day and day in and day out, and they have evolved since September. And we thought this was a perfect time to create a slide deck, a brief slide deck, to take a look at some of the protocols and also how they've evolved through time. At the end of the presentation, we put a few slides in to kind of let everybody know that we're super excited about bringing students back, but we still need to not let our guard down. There are some districts that have already started to struggle with increased COVID-19 test results, et cetera, and have had to reverse some of the things that they've done. So it's a gentle reminder that our success is dependent on everybody working together, as I've said many times, to keep us as safe as possible. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn to start the presentation, and at the end, we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Clenchey. I don't want to kill the vibe, but I do want to talk a little bit about how important it is that we maintain vigilance with all of the strategies. So if you could just move on to the next slide. COVID-19 is still here. We are in the yellow zone for the public health metrics. We have to continue to follow the mitigation strategies. It's really important to wear a very well-fitted mask, frequent hand washing, physical distancing, avoid any unnecessary travel. But the most important is that we need everybody to really commit to not bring sickness into the school community. So we have our attestation checklist that we ask everyone to review each morning. So if you go through any of the symptoms on the checklist, if you're answering yes to any of them, please stay home, get tested for COVID. If the COVID test is negative, you may return to school if the symptoms have improved, and if you're fever-free for at least 24 hours. And if you're positive, you need to isolate. If you could just move on to the next slide. So for COVID positive individuals, the isolation protocol, remain home except to get medical care, notify the school nurse, and personal close contacts. It's really important that you're mindful and really think about any of those close contacts that you may have encountered, and sharing that information with the school nurse is critical. Please answer the call if you get it from the local board of health. I know sometimes we get those unfamiliar phone calls and we think it's a robocall, but please, it could be the Community Tracing Collaborative. You may resume normal activities when 10 days of isolation is complete and the symptoms have improved and you've remained fever-free for at least 24 hours without the use of medications. And you have to submit a clearance from isolation letter from the Board of Health to the school nurse. For close contacts, the quarantine protocol is to remain home, notify the school nurse that you have been identified as a close contact, and actively monitor for COVID symptoms. The incubation period for COVID is 2 to 14 days. If you have no symptoms, it's recommended that you get tested on day 5 from exposure with a PCR or rapid antigen test. If you experience symptoms, even mild ones, you may test sooner and you must quarantine for 14 days, even if the test is negative. The 14-day quarantine is the gold standard. That's the maximal risk reduction. The 10-day quarantine, there's no test necessary. You must actively monitor for symptoms for the full 14 days. And the 7-day quarantine option, which we certainly does increase your residual risk. It requires a negative test result on day 5 or later. You must remain symptom-free and you must actively monitor for symptoms for the full 14 days. So with regard to student attendance and access to learning, attendance is required on all scheduled school days. If a child's absent, it's the responsibility of parents or guardians to keep the school informed each day of the absence. Parental communication is essential as well as appreciated. Students will be provided with access to an educational program in the event that the reason for absence is associated with a documented need to adhere to an established health and safety protocol. For instance, if examples would be that the student is defined as a close contact, the student is asymptomatic but required to quarantine, or is awaiting results from a COVID-19 test. but are otherwise healthy and able to engage in learning, your child's school will work with you to coordinate a plan that aligns with the individual circumstances. Students who are ill and are not able to engage in learning should remain home to recuperate from their illness. All other relevant attendance policies remain in effect. So just to review how the CDC guidelines define a close contact, it's someone within 6 feet of a person diagnosed with COVID-19 for a total cumulative 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period, regardless of whether the person was wearing a mask. For schools that use less than 6 feet between students in classrooms, the definition of close contacts has not changed to date. So close contacts will be anyone within that 6 feet perimeter. Students sitting less than 6 feet next to each other of a person diagnosed with COVID-19 for a total of 15 minutes must quarantine at home and be referred for testing. Exclusions to being identified as a close contact are people who have tested positive for COVID-19 within the past 3 months and have recovered as long as they do not develop new symptoms, and people who have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and show no symptoms. Next slide. So the definition of a fully vaccinated individual is a minimum of 2 weeks after a person has received the second dose in a 2-dose series. So either the Pfizer, BioNTech, or Moderna, or a minimum of 2 weeks after they've received a single dose vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson. So fully vaccinated people should continue to wear a well-fitted mask, practice physical distancing, and adhere to other prevention measures, avoid medium and large-side gatherings, get tested if you're experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, follow guidance issued by your individual employer, and follow CDC and Health Department travel requirements and recommendations. So for school facilities and operations, the previous guidance, DESI said that desks must be at least 3 feet apart, facing the same direction if students are together for longer than 20 minutes. So the updated guidance is CDC agrees that at least 3 feet of distance between students in elementary school, same in middle and high school, as long as there's no high community spread of COVID. Face masks are, the previous guidance says that they were required for grades 2 and up unless a student receives a medical or behavior exemption. We had a higher standard, so we were requiring masks for all grade levels, and that is the new guidance with DESI. It's required for all grade levels unless a student receives a medical or behavioral exemption, and they're required even for those who are fully vaccinated. Previous guidance for bus capacity was 1 student per bench. Right now, the updated guidance, the capacity limit has been lifted in elementary schools as long as all other safety protocols are followed. Everyone must wear masks. Windows must be open at least 2 inches. We must maintain seat assignments. Same in the middle and high school as long as there's no high community spread of COVID. For recess, the previous guidance dictated that at least 3 feet of distance between students unless unmasked, then at least 6 feet. Hand hygiene before and after using recess space. Cohorts maintained, if possible, clean and disinfect high-touch surfaces made of plastic or metal at least daily or between cohort use. The updated guidance, the same safety protocols except playgrounds do no longer require disinfection, just frequently cleaned where surfaces made of plastic or metal are touched frequently. Shared items like balls or jump ropes may be used but should be cleaned between each use. We need to maintain our safety protocols with regard to signage, physical distancing, visitors, and bathroom use. So limit the use of students in the bathroom to 1 at a time. For example, using a bathroom sign-out system. You can go to the next slide. So for lunch protocols, the previous guidance from DESI was a strict 6 feet distance between students unless plexiglass barriers are used. The updated guidance maintains that a strict 6 feet distance between students. Plexiglass barriers are actually no longer recommended due to challenges in cleaning and disinfecting regularly, and it may also prevent optimal airflow. The previous guidance with preferred areas, classrooms for eating, keeping the same cohort, same space, and outdoor areas. The updated guidance, we may use multiple areas to increase physical space for meals. For instance, classrooms, cafeteria, outside eating areas, gym, and rooms that are typically used for specials. Hand hygiene, cleaning, meal distribution, and water fountains, there have been no changes. So with chorus, band, and PE protocols, chorus singing, brass and woodwind instrument use, and physical education activities, dance and theater, they do require enhanced health and safety measures because they may involve increased respiration. The guidance is intentionally conservative and does recommend modifications to minimize the elevated risks. And DESE does strongly encourage that the courses and activities be held fully or partially online. If they're held in person, it is encouraged that the activities occur outdoors when possible. For physical education, no games with close physical contact. Physical education should prioritize activities that do not require shared equipment, prioritize outdoor activities whenever possible. Students should wash or sanitize hands before and after physical education. Particular attention should be paid to washing and sanitizing hands before and after. Masks are removed and put on. No sharing of water bottles, towels, mouth guards, helmets, or other equipment. I hope that wouldn't even be occurring when it's not a pandemic. As part of the school cleaning and disinfecting protocols, frequently clean and disinfect any high touch surfaces. So for physical education, if students are outdoors without masks, they need to maintain 10 feet of distance. If they're outdoors with masks, 6 feet of distance. Indoors with masks, 6 feet of distance. For chorus singing and musical theater, all of the mitigation strategies are important to maintain that was in the previous guidance: tight, well-fitted masks, large, well-ventilated spaces, lower volume. Students should be facing one direction and avoid sharing materials like music stands or pages of music, stuff like that. If outdoors with masks are encouraged, if possible, these activities can occur with at least 10 feet of distance between individuals. If indoors with masks required, these activities can occur with at least 10 feet of distance between individuals if in-person school is occurring. It is limited to 30 minutes at one time, and the activities cannot occur indoors without a mask. For band and the use of musical instruments, the instruction for musical instruments that require blowing, for instance, a flute, an oboe, a clarinet, trumpet, saxophone, or trombone, can occur outdoors or indoors. If in-person school is occurring, then individuals need to be at least 10 feet apart, and the instrument should never be shared. Instruction for musical instruments that do not involve air blowing, so strings, percussion, piano, may continue indoors or outdoors as long as health and safety requirements are met. And if needed, these instruments can be shared between students in accordance with DESE guidance. Next slide. There has been an update to the travel order. It is now a travel advisory. So effective Monday, March 22nd, the Massachusetts travel order was replaced with a travel advisory. So all visitors entering Massachusetts, including returning residents, are urged to quarantine for 10 days upon their arrival. Travelers are encouraged to consult and follow the CDC's guidelines and requirements for travel. Travelers are exempt from this advisory if they have obtained a negative COVID-19 test, administered up to 72 hours prior to their arrival in Massachusetts. If not obtained before entry to Mass, a test may be obtained after arrival as long as travelers quarantine until a negative test result has been received. They're exempt if they are fully vaccinated, for instance, have received 2 doses of either the Moderna or Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines, or who have received a single dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine 14 days or more ago, and who do not have symptoms. They return to Mass after being out of state for fewer than 24 hours, and children who are younger than 10 years old. Our local Board of Health does recommend that all travelers, including children, follow travel advisory, and I would encourage everybody to follow the travel advisory whenever possible and limit unnecessary travel. Again, COVID-19 hasn't left the building. Don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but on March 21st, there was an article, a local Massachusetts high school switched to remote learning after what officials are calling the largest coronavirus outbreak in the town since the start of the pandemic, and as a result, had to close to in-person learning until at least April 5th. The outbreak in the community followed an off-campus non-school non-school event. Town health and school officials became aware of it the prior week, and the outbreak led to an estimated 100 residents to become exposed to the virus. Also, be mindful of the potential for clusters. Dozens of people tested positive for COVID-19 in connection with a cluster at a youth cheerleading facility in Massachusetts. There were 37 coronavirus cases across 14 cities and towns since Monday that were tied to this training facility, and the number doesn't include family members or close contacts, according to the officials. So it's incredibly important to continue to follow all of the mitigation strategies that we have in place. I would say even more important, because we're changing a huge variable. We're going to be exponentially increasing the number of students who are in the classrooms, which just putting more people in a space means that we need to be incredibly more mindful of physical distancing when possible, hand washing, wearing a well-fitted mask, changing our masks. All of those things that we do are going to help minimize the COVID-19 risks that we have. And if we do all of these things, it's going to be able to have us stay in school, which is ultimately our goal. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Valuable information, a great reminder. Steve, you want to chime in on something on top of that?
Yeah, I just want to update the community and school committee to one reference Lynn made about water fountains in the schools. We've added at all of the schools additional water bottle fill stations. So I believe there's at least 2 at each school. I believe there's 3 or 4. I've lost count at the high school, but so we encourage, obviously, students to bring water bottles and use those water bottle fill stations.
All right, thank you. Yep, but Justin, go ahead.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask, but I was curious about the mass travel mandate and how it jives with the school, because I know previously, obviously, the words were that you were required to quarantine had you left the state, or you could test out of it. And I believe that we were sort of following those same guidelines, where maybe even the nurses were reaching out to families, asking about what their plans were to quarantine coming back, and were they going to test in, test out, that type of stuff. So where that mandate has changed, are we as a school system changing? Because now it's no longer required. It's just advised that you quarantine or test out. So I think we'll get a lot of questions about that.
I can certainly answer that, Justin.
Thanks, Kelly.
We are moving toward the travel advisory. I mean, the state has created the new normal, or the new standard more correctly, and we don't feel that we should be going beyond that at this point in time. I mean, if things change, then we will certainly reassess it.
Okay. And it's more about what you're doing if you were to leave the state than it is the fact that you've actually crossed state lines. So if you're, gathering with multiple people, family reunions, all that stuff where you're letting your guard down, then that's not necessarily appropriate, and you should certainly quarantine or test coming back in. But if you're crossing state lines to whatever, buy your alcohol a little cheaper and come back, then I don't think you need the quarantine. Or check on a second home or something like that. So anyways, thank you, Kelly.
All right, anybody else? All right, thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that. Was an encompassing presentation. It was important to remind everybody that, we're not back to normal by any stretch of the imagination. We've ramped up the amount of in-person learning that we think we can accommodate, but that is in the specific context of where we are in terms of still battling this pandemic. And it's important that everybody remember that. And because remembering it will, as Lynn said so clearly, will give us the best chance of keeping our school in person and not have to revert even farther back than where we were conceivably a few weeks ago, which is exactly what happened in a couple of communities in Massachusetts. So it's important that everybody understand that and implicitly agree to do the best they can to comply with all of the things that we've all talked about and faced. I know it's not easy. There's a lot of fatigue out there. There's a lot of excitement about opening up our lives a little bit more, but for people who are participating in school and have children who are participating in school, we ask that you really keep that discipline in mind and keep the health and safety of our students and staff at the forefront of your decision making. So thank you for all that. All right. I think we are at the next section for input from interested citizens. Oh, Brad, sorry, go ahead.
Mike, can I just ask a question, Lynn? I'm sorry if I missed it, but maybe I don't think I did. If I recall correctly from Katrina's kind of summary, we've been averaging 2 to 3-ish kind of cases into schools every couple weeks, right? And most of those, if I recall correctly, have not had close contacts. Is it reasonable to expect that if we continue to have, these rates, if we keep the community spread at where it is, we will expect to have 2 or 3 or 4 in schools every couple weeks. But our close contact numbers and people have to quarantine for that reason will be much higher because of we're getting under the 6 feet.
Yep, they're going to increase exponentially. So where now, if we're maintaining the 6 feet of distance, we could theoretically have a positive case with no close contacts, where now all of the students who are going to be in that, the perimeter of the student would be considered close contacts if they're within that 6 feet range. The definition of close contact has not changed. So particularly for students who are moving in classrooms, so at the middle school and high school, that could, one positive case could result in, a 30 some odd close contacts.
That's what I thought too. I just wanted to get confirmed. Thank you.
So really important to keep stringent with all of those mitigation strategies.
Yep. All right, we're good. All right, we have interested citizens.
We have a class. Amy Tez, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, it's Amy Tez, 117 Whitcomb Avenue. I actually have a couple questions. I was wondering if you knew what the percentage was of teachers who've participated or staff who've participated in the vaccination program, and if not the exact percentage, what your sense about that would be. I know it's kind of still early in getting appointments, but just trying to gauge that. I also have a question about if you anticipate any plans to increase the frequency of mask breaks with the warmer weather coming, and if you could kind of describe any changes you might make to that, because masking is so important, but just thinking about having more kids in the building, and if they're taking masks off and if it's warm, just how you're going to approach that. And then my last question is regarding the bus. If you'd consider requiring pool testing for riders, given that it's closer quarters and spacing.
Amy, can I just ask for clarification? Your first part of the question, were you asking teachers participating in the pool testing or teachers getting vaccinated?
No, the vaccination program. Yep.
Okay. So we cannot ask them if they've been vaccinated or not. That's private information. We can't require disclosure on it, so we wouldn't have any information on that. But I'll ask Dr. Clenchey to address the mask breaking and maybe get the principals to chime in if necessary. But I'd also like to ask Dr. Clenchey, for Amy's third question, would we even be able to require testing for busing, or do we have to provide busing as long as we're following the other requirements for providing it?
I can start with the third question. We're only required to follow the protocols at this time. I mean, the discussion is certainly not dissimilar to testing of athletes, compulsory testing. So the school committee has weighed in at this point in time. We're going to strongly encourage, and that's about all we will do. We'll continue to think of ways to increase the number of people participating. In regards to mask breaks, I mean, we've touched on this earlier this evening. We're going to have a number of students that are going to be in school for the first time and a structured environment for 6 hours a day. So we're going to have to increase the frequency of mask breaks in a safe manner. So the weather is warm. I would like the principals to chime in as well, but I can certainly envision that there'll be more mask breaks taken outside throughout the day.
All right, and Principal Michelle, go ahead.
I mean, I just raised my hand because I figure I'm going to speak on behalf of all the principals, but we have 3 scheduled mask breaks regardless of weather throughout the day for each teacher, and they're scheduled at times that work best for their kids and their tolerance. But as Dr. Clenchey mentioned, the warmer weather naturally brings on more breaks, being outside, having that opportunity. So I really can't say how many each teacher will have, but I think I can definitely say yes with confidence that there'll be an increase because we'll be going outside, we'll get some fresh air. But they definitely have at least 3 a day.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I just wanted to say, I think that we all, at least I, in our household, we really support mask wearing. And I think I've heard a little more concern from some folks about actually kids being able to wear masks for the day with the warmer weather coming, and just wanted to get some clarification around how that would be addressed.
Okay. Lynn, did you want to add something to that?
Sure. I just the question about pool testing for riding the bus. I think it's important for parents to. I think everybody should sign up for pool testing. That would be great. If there's going to be more kids on the bus, just like there's going to be more kids in the school, I think it would be great for everybody to sign up for pool testing. Parents are also carpooling too, so as far as one or the other, we really wouldn't be able to do that. But just to pitch pool testing again, I think everybody should sign up.
Cheryl?
I just want to add that while we've been talking about this, Mary Philpott, I did check my email, and Mary Philpott updated the numbers for this week. And Russell Street each week has had about 3 or 4 additional students, and this week we have 12. So that means that people are getting the message. So I don't know how the other schools fared, but I'm happy to see that people are still getting the message and signing up.
All right, great. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, I had a quick question. So, Amy's question about access to vaccine, I realize that there's HIPAA laws and we're not going to have an exact percentage, but I was just wondering anecdotally from the staff and the leadership team, as someone who does not yet have access to vaccine, are you finding that you are able to get, the staff is able to get appointments, or is it extremely difficult still, or how's that going? I think that was kind of the question, was how's it going?
Yeah, I can certainly address that question. It's actually going really well. Our teachers have worked together. Our administrative assistants has chipped in as well, or have chipped in as well. And a lot of our teachers have had their initial dose of vaccine, and some have had the J&J as well. I mean, when we're in schools, we're obviously talking to staff all the time, and some of them will freely tell us about their experience with the vaccination. So feeling pretty good. It would be hard to put a definitive percentage, but I haven't run into personally many teachers that haven't had their first vaccination anyway. And I have not run into any teachers that have not been able to pre-book an appointment, the ones who want an appointment. So I'm feeling really good about what's happened in our schools. And I was really pleased to see people pull together and work together to find appointments for vaccines. I know central office, we were using our staff as well to help out. And so we're in pretty good shape. I mean, we all realize that, I mean, I can say this with some confidence that most of our staff have had a Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. So there's a second dose that needs to happen. And, my prediction, and without a lot of fact, is I anticipate a lot of second doses will occur between April 12th and the Easter break. So when we're back from Easter break, I think a significant number of our staff will have the second vaccine and have the antibody load to benefit from it.
All right, great. Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah.
Eileen, please state your name, your street, and your question, please.
Hi, it's Eileen Wiedegartner on Maplehurst Road. I just have a quick question around if we end up calling our children in, and it's only because I had done it earlier this week and I just wanted clarification around it. Like, if you call your child in because, say, they have a headache, are you supposed to keep them at home all day? Is it okay for them to attend remotely during that time, even though you don't really think they have COVID? I'm wrestling with stuff like that as a parent. I kind of like got on that.
All right. Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
So headache is one of the symptoms on the symptom checklist with other symptoms. So if your child has a headache and would ordinarily stay home from school because they have a headache, if something like migraines, then yes, they would stay home and recuperate from that illness. For them to be on the attestation form, the headache needs to be paired with other symptoms on the list.
Okay, it was basically like I thought it was not to give too much. I thought it was like allergy sort of stuff, but I wanted to be cautious. And I just kind of feel like you don't want to send a kid into school, even though they haven't had exposure, because it could be, you don't want to, I'd rather err on the side of caution.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
We would rather have you err on the side of caution too, Eileen. Thank you.
The symptoms of allergies can very much mimic COVID. So if you're experiencing those symptoms paired together, or you're meeting the criteria on that list, it is best to test, and you're symptomatic, so you would be able to do that.
Lynn, can you address the second part of the question, which is, so if you do keep your child home for those reasons, what are the expectations for accessing lessons and learning that day?
But kind of part of that with me was, like, I ended up keeping my son home. I sent him in and I said, if they send you home, whatever, we're just going to call you out sick for the day. And I didn't really think he had anything. And it turns out at the end of the day, he was fine. And it was just allergy stuff. But like, if I keep him home, am I supposed to get him tested?
No, you need to follow the attestation checklist. So I would say err on the side of caution, unless you are able to confirm with no uncertainty that it is allergies and not the possibility of COVID. I would say err on the side of caution and test, because if you're symptomatic, you're able to go and test, and it would be covered under your insurance when you're symptomatic. So you wouldn't need to pay out of pocket for that. It just makes sense to test and rule that out. And you could test negative and then test positive subsequently. So you need to continue to monitor for symptoms.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. Sorry. And for my own clarification, what would families do? Like, would they dial in remotely? Michelle, go ahead.
Mike, we had a long discussion today at Admin Council, and we are just, to answer your question, what are they going to do? We're tweaking out a few things, and we'll have it in our newsletter this weekend.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
The only thing I'd like to add to that, Mike, is if students are ill or sick, we don't want parents to feel compelled to connect them. I mean, if they need to lay on the couch and spend time getting better, that's what we want. We don't want parents to feel obligated that they need to be connected when they're sick. I mean, that's not the right thing to do. We want them to get better and not feel that pressure to be connected.
Right. I appreciate that. That was stated in some of the presentation we had, that and I just want to get it more clearly. If a child is sick, they're sick, and they should treat it like a sick day. And I think that from my personal perspective, we would ask that of parents as well, because even if the child you felt is a tough kid and can hang in there with an online thing, it might still not be ideal for the teacher and the rest of the learners as well. If that student is struggling, the teacher becomes concerned, and things like that. So I think that's an important part of the message. A truly sick child should be treated like a normal sick day, and then when they're ready to come back to school, whatever that means in each parent's or family's context, terrific. But I think we are going to have situations, and we definitely want parents to understand that if you are multi-symptomatic and you fairly confident that it's not COVID, we still want you to adhere to the protocols, but that would mean that we would want to be able to facilitate access to instruction if it was appropriate. So I appreciate Michelle's point, as long as we get it ironed out. And again, this is one of the things that I alluded to earlier. Even if we decide on a certain methodology, we may tweak it and change it as we get farther into this experience together to figure out what is working and what is not working. So, you know, everybody should be prepared to adjust accordingly and be flexible. All right. Any other public input?
No more questions?
All right. Okay, then we'll segue into subcommittee updates, PMBC, anything to talk about? All right. Budget? Zero. Budget is zero. And I'm going to ask, I know we have on the agenda policy. I am not prepared to vote on the second reading. My apologies. So let's just push these particular policies to the next meeting. All right. Thank you for indulging me. Is there anything else? All right, Brad?
Just real quick, a reminder, there's CPACs. There's going to be a workshop on basic rights, evaluation, and eligibility on the 30th. And so people need to register beforehand, but it's going to be really informative for those, especially those who are new to the process or just want to know about the process.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, motion made at second. Before we take the roll call vote, I'll remind everybody we are not meeting next week. Our next meeting will be on April 8th. All right, so I will now take a roll call vote on the motion to adjourn. Brad?
Brad Austin votes yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Timmerland?
Ellen Rassius, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hun, yes.
And Mike Fontella votes yes as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, LCTV, Judy and Dave, and Dorothy and Bettina for the help administratively, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Good luck on
Thank
Monday,
you all.
everybody.
Good night.